Well, hey guys, it's Michael here. In this video today we're going to be reviewing the Amico CTS 160. It's a plasma stick TIG combo machine. This thing caught my eye recently. I had some people ask me about plasma torches, something in the $200–300 range, if I've tried any on Amazon before. And I have a Cut 50, and I'll link a little video to a plasma track I've actually built for it and got some pretty good cuts off it. But it's a kind of, I don't know, I never did a review on it because the quality seemed to be not that great. So I'll let you guys in on a little discovery I just had with this thing. This a few days later. It's actually a pretty good little TIG welder. If you guys stick around the video a little later, I'll tell you exactly why. I looked on Amazon and checked out some stuff, and this thing really caught my eye because it's a plasma cutter, stick machine, and TIG machine all built into one little combo unit. And I think it might be a pretty good little welder for somebody like a DIYer, weekend kind of hobbyist. So we're going to get this thing unpacked here and check it out. So if you guys seen any of my other welder review videos, you know I don't really care for that long, slow, drawn-out unboxing. So let's get on to actually using this thing. So we're going to go over all these features and all the cord lengths and all that stuff when it applies to each process of the machine. That's how we're going to do this review here. So we're going to start off with plasma because I think a lot of people are buying this to try out as a plasma. The stick welder will do second and TIG third. Anyways, it looks like a yard sale. I'm going to pick this table up here and go over some stuff. One thing I want to point out though real quick was the freakishly large size of this ground clamp. I'm not sure what the hell they got going here. This is ridiculous. I don't know, man. Making up for something? Who knows? Let's try out the plasma now. I'm going to do a little talk over while we're cutting some metal on here to kind of condense the video a little bit. This machine works pretty good. I found that on 120 volts it cuts up to 32–33 amps. And that's what it was listed as on the website, that it was a 30 amp plasma torch. And I found that when you plug it into 240 volts, it actually is about 42–43 amps. So that's kind of a nice little feature. They didn't actually list it all in here. I found that the consumables for the tips right up here are actually the same as the Cut 50, Cut 40 probably. The actual torch itself is actually a little nicer than the Cut 40 or the Cut 50 that I had. It has a little ball socket up here. It's got a little trigger lock so you don't bump it and turn on the trigger. But the consumables up on the head are about the same. And I'll put a link below because when I was doing some research on this, what consumables actually took, nobody listed on their websites on Amazon what consumables they were. Yeah, I got the consumables right here and they're like the exact same stuff, so that's a nice thing. So I'll put a link down below to Amazon where you guys can get those if you're interested in that. Another thing I did was I built this little standoff, holds the tip about a 1/16 inch, just adjustable. It's hose clamp and some, I think, 10 gauge copper wire, and it's just so you can slide it across some metal. Keep in mind, if you do a standoff and you're not touching the tip directly to the metal, it has to actually bridge the gap with a little high frequency arc. When you pull the trigger on, not always will it start the first time. You might have to give it 1 or 2 pulls. You'll see a little arc between them. And so that's one thing. If you do build a standoff, just be patient with it because it doesn't fire up every single time if the tip's not touching. It is high frequency start, but it still has to jump a little gap there. Well, pop the breaker on that one. Besides me not having a dedicated 20 amp breaker for the shop here, I got a 20 amp circuit there, but I got a bunch of lights on it and stuff like that. I'm actually cutting 1/4 inch pretty well here on 120 volts. If it cuts all this on 120, it'll do just fine on 240. We're at maximum 33 amps. But let me clean off the slag here and show you guys what we got for cuts. Here's the 3 pieces of metal with the slag on them still. We'll chip off this slag and you guys can take a look at that. For anybody doubting the thickness of these things, there you go, 1/8 inch. Three/16. So I got the pancake compressor hooked up to here because I know there's a lot of guys out there that's all they have, and I'm going to get that question a lot if I don't do it in this video. So we got it hooked up here and we got this thing plugged into 240 volts. It's kind of a pleasant surprise. No matter what I read on the internet in the manual, it said this was a 30 amp plasma torch. It actually goes up to 42 amps on 240, so that's a nice little surprise. All right, we got some 3/8 metal here and some 1/2 inch metal, so we're gonna give it a shot. I think it's gonna cut 3/8 just fine. I think it's gonna struggle on 1/2 inch, but we'll take a look. But anyways, with the plasma torch here, it actually cuts pretty good. I would say it's pretty good for a DIY guy doing some projects on his weekend. As we saw, it cuts actually up to 1/2 inch really well, which is a nice thing. The titanium 45 that I have actually cuts really well too. I've been really happy with that machine, but there's a giant difference in price. That titanium is like $750 for just the plasma torch alone. But it actually is a pilot arc, which means that you can actually use that on a CNC table. And this being high frequency, you can't use it on a CNC table because the high frequency will mess up the electronics, create a lot of interference really. For a DIY guy, being the fact that this thing's $340 to $400, it's really a pretty good price for having plasma capabilities, stick and TIG. And yeah, really cool thing was this thing uses a lot less air than the titanium does. I was able to run this thing off a pancake compressor, no problem at all. And the titanium's rated for around 90 to 110 PSI, and it seems to go through a lot of cubic feet per minute. And this thing's, I think, rated for around 30 PSI. And it seemed to be the compressor, the little pancake compressor, kept up with this thing no problem. One final thing I want to note while we're on the plasma side of this thing is most plasma torches come with the air/water filter, and they usually mount on the back. The Cut 50 had a little hokey one that hung on the back with some tubing. The plasma 45 that I have has one hanging off the back, and the idea, these guys put one in here, but it's actually under this little side cover, which is kind of nice they included, and it's out of the way in case you're packing this thing around. You don't get to where, you know, taking it to a buddy's house or something, you find that in the back of your car it slid over and broke it off. So they have it internally. We'll pull off this cover and I'll show you guys what's going on in there. Another cool thing is it's got this really large slab of aluminum heat sink on here and a really large fan. And this thing doesn't actually, when you first plug it in, the fan doesn't come on until the internals get to 120 degrees. There's a little temperature sensor right there. And the fan has actually moved some air, but it's pretty whisper quiet. It's kind of a nice little feature. It's not like you have this fan blaring in the background on this machine. It's very quiet even when the fan's running. Alright, so we're going to get on to stick next and then follow up the video and finish it off with TIG. So as I'm hooking up the ground, I realized that it's kind of nice. It runs a standard DINS plugs. I think it's a DINS 50, which is pretty universal for a lot of welders. This is a Vulcan Pro TIG 200 and runs the exact same plug-in on here, which is nice. There's a lot of welders that run this fitting. It's just nice when a company keeps something standard and doesn't run something completely oddball on them. Alright you guys, now on to a little bit of stick welding here. Now on 120 volts it goes up to 130 amps, but don't plan on welding 130 amps. It pops the breaker easily over 100. Actually I found that over 90 it seems to be a problem in my shop. Keep in mind I don't have a dedicated 20 amp breaker just for this welder. Actually I have an overhead exhaust fan and some lights on in my shop, so that's drawing it down a little bit. But we're going to be welding probably around 80 or 85 amps a day with some 3/32 rod. Let's do a little bit of test to kind of show you guys it welding, and then we're going to move on to TIG. Alright, let's get welding. Alright, we got this machine set for 70 amps here. We're on 120 volts, and we're going to be welding 3/32 6013 welding rod. So we'll lay a little bead down here and bring you guys in for a closer look. We got some 3/32 7018. We got the machine set to 80 amps, so we'll lay down a bead. So that's 6013 and that's 7018, 3/32 rod. Like I said, I wouldn't probably deal with going over 90 amps. You're going to deal with popping the breaker quite often. Alright, quick 240 volt test. This is 1/8 inch, 6013, set at about 100 amps here. Gonna lay some of this down. We'll get going. Alright, we're going to crank it up to about 110 amps, 112, 70-18, 1/8 inch. Alright, we'll clean that slag off and bring you guys in for a closer look. So there's the 6013 right here. It sure strikes an arc really nice, doesn't stick, and the 7018 is the next beat over. 6013 was laid down at 100 amps, the 7018 was laid down at 110. Alright you guys, it's TIG time now. We're going to hook up the torch here, talk about this a little bit, and get welding. Alright, before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about this machine. When I was looking to buy it, actually I kind of could find mixed reviews. I was reading different things online, trying to figure out if it was high frequency, or if it was lift or scratch start. And I couldn't really find any solid information on that. I contacted the actual seller and asked them that same question. They told me it was scratch start, which I was thinking that's kind of a bummer. I started looking at photos of it, didn't have a manual valve on it for gas. I ended up getting it and I was pleasantly surprised. It's actually high frequency. The seller doesn't know what they're actually selling here. And it's got a little button up here to start it and stop it. It's got a little gas solenoid built into the machine here. It's got about a 4-second post flow. Definitely a big improvement over the Vulcan Omni Pro and the Titanium 200. Those are like lift and scratch machines, and they got manual valve, gas valve on the handle here. And this thing, they could have went a little bit longer post flow on here. I think it's about 4 seconds or so long. Could have been maybe 6 or 7, but if they would have made the post flow too long, people would probably complain about like the Pro TIG 200. So I guess you're always trying to make everyone happy. It's kind of hard to do. All right, we're going to start off with a little bit of TIG test here on 120 volts. And it goes up to something ridiculous like 140. I don't believe it puts 140 amps on 120. But we're going to be welding probably in the 80 amp range. I would probably plan on only actually be able to weld about 1/8 inch on this machine on 120 volts. It will go up to 160 on 240. I believe that. One other thing I want to mention is this welder came with actually this little collet set and the cup set for the TIG components, and it came with some really cheap looking tungsten. I didn't bother with the tungsten or these. I actually have some links down below to a cup set, gas diffuser, clear Pyrex cup set. This thing will be links down below for them on Amazon. This is a 17 torch and these fit right on there. So you get these little clear glass cups and these stubby gas diffusers. They got a little stainless steel screen in here, which gets better coverage over your area when you're welding. I think they're like in the $20 range for this set. And I'll put a link below for this tungsten I've been running for welding on aluminum and for steel for the DC machines. This is a blue tungsten electrode. You get 5 16th inch and 5 3/32, and they're about $15, $16 range. So there's two key things I want to point out with welding with TIG machines is you need 100% argon gas to weld with them, and you need to have your metal really clean. You always hear that about aluminum for welding with AC TIG machines. Granted, this is a DC TIG machine, so you're going to be limited mainly to steel and stainless steel, and you can do some TIG brazing. Aluminum's out. People say you can do it with helium. It's not very practical though. Anyways, clean metal is key, and 100% argon gas. So we got this tack welded here. We're going to go through and fill this in. So that was on 80 amps on 120 volts. 1/8 inch steel plate we're welding with a 16th inch rod. I really like that high frequency start. That really makes a difference on this machine. So here's a quick little tip. If you want a little pre-flow on this machine, you just push the button down away from the workpiece a little bit. You get about 4 seconds of pre-flow. and then you bring it in and push the button again. You'll start your arc. When you get to the very end, you let off the button. It'll have about 4 seconds of post flow. Bring it away from your workpiece again and push it again. You'll get another 4 seconds of flow. Just a little suggestion. So we're going to test the high frequency start here, and this is a 1/4 inch piece of metal right here. We're going to set that kind of as our height. We're going to bring it over to the side of it and see if it'll jump it. So there you go. Jumps about a 1/4 inch on the high frequency, so that's pretty good. Alright, we got the machine plugged into 240 here, and we're going to max this thing out. Looks like 171 amps. And we got some 1/4 inch, and we got some 3/32 filler rod. Tack these pieces together and see how it does. One thing I want to mention is no one's paying me to make this review. I paid out of pocket 100% for this machine, $329 plus tax. I made it on my own because I've actually had a lot of people ask about cheaper plasma torches online. It's one of those machines that when I started looking over plasma torches and saw that this is a multi-process machine with stick and TIG capabilities, it actually caught my eye, and I was actually interested to try this out, see what I think about it. So if anyone's griping in the comments claiming I'm sponsored, I definitely am not. I paid 100% for this machine to try it out, whether it's good or bad. So after finishing that weld, the fan finally came on, and as you guys can hear, it's pleasantly quiet. That Pro TIG 200 has a ridiculously, there it goes, just shut off. The Pro TIG 200 has a ridiculously loud fan that runs all the time, and it blows so much air outside the side of the welder, you almost have to shield the side plate of it, or it blows across the shop and kind of messes with your argon flow. Pretty good so far. Like any of these new welders, I always said that with the titanium and the Omni Pro, time will tell on those, and I've had those things for over a year now. They've been rock solid. Time will tell on this thing, and we'll find out a year from now how it really holds up. So here's the 2 welds I did. This is with 3/32 filler rod on both of these at 170 amps. This one has a little pinhole there, and there's a little porosity. I think this is old plasma stuff, and it had a plasma arc right here I wasn't able to get into and clean out, so I think it carried a little bit of that on, but for the most part I'm really happy with the way these turned out here. Alright, so we covered plasma, stick, and TIG. I would have to say the plasma torch works fine. It's probably equivalent to about a cut 40 on Amazon. The stick worked fine. Nothing spectacular about it. Worked okay. But I would have to say actually where this thing shines is on the TIG side of things. Being high frequency and having the little gas valve built into here. It just seemed to be a cut above say the Omni Pro that I've reviewed in the past and the Titanium 200. Both those machines were lift start. The Titanium acted more like a scratch start to me. But the fact that you can start and stop your weld just by the button here is really nice. Only thing the Omni Pro had one up on this was it was a DC TIG that had a foot control amperage. You could buy the amperage pedal extra. This does not have amperage pedal controls anywhere on it. You can't hook one up. But I found that really the amperage pedal is more crucial for welding aluminum on an AC TIG. With DC, it's not that big of a thing. You just set your amperage to like, oh, I'm going to be welding 1/8 inch. I'm going to set it to about 85 amps and run it through there. It's not as crucial as if you're welding aluminum with an AC machine. A few little things to point out that I thought were a little downside of this machine. It came with this giant 1940s lead right here, and right out of the box it had some cracks on it, which just seemed pretty cheap to me. And I think it says it's a Jackson. Another thing was this ground clamp was crazy big for clamping small pieces. It just was really cumbersome, got in the way. I went and bought one of these for $8 at Harbor Freight. It's not any higher quality, it's just smaller and just easier to get on smaller work pieces. A few more things. This regulator on this thing, built-in regulator, I found if you're running 120 PSI from your air compressor, it makes a really odd sound. That makes a weird sound when it's running. Okay. But if you turn your air compressor regulator down to like 40 or 50 and then put this one at like 30, it actually wouldn't make it's really weird sound. So if you turn your regulator coming into it around to 60 and let this one finalize it down to 30, it was fine. This does actually use a lot less air than the Titanium 45, so that was a nice thing for DIY guys on the weekends if you just run a small compressor. One final note is if this company maybe even just charged a little more but went over a few of these things and just fine-tuned them a little more, they'd probably have a pretty decent product. One is just one of these leads on the hook up here was missing a screw, so it was kind of coming apart, and where it actually the metal mounts to the cable is actually not a tight fit. It just doesn't feel like a good fitment there. Like I said, that Jackson lead has some cracks right out of the box on it. The manual was really bad. The manual was in English, but it was just, somebody actually went through the manual and penned in different numbers for the PSI ratings for this thing. Just print a new manual, guys. If you're gonna send a paper manual out with this thing, there's another point in there in the troubles. If you're looking over like having troubles with it in the very end of the manual, at the very end it says to consult Everlast if you have any more problems. And as far as I know, it's an Amico welder. Maybe it's a sister company to Everlast. I'm not sure. Maybe they just copied it out of Everlast manual. I'm not sure. But the fact that it didn't give all the information right, in the manual it said it was a pilot arc. This thing's a high frequency start for the plasma. Not a big thing, because buying it, I knew it said it was high frequency buying it. For the plasma, it said it was scratch start. The seller told me it was scratch start for the TIG, which they're wrong. I just think that they could fine tune a few things and probably make a much better machine, just overall fitment, maybe charge $100 more, but make sure you don't got cracked handles on stuff like this, and the fitment of some of these parts a little tighter. But like I said, it had DINS plugins on here, which is nice. It's a nice universal plugin for most welders, which is a nice feature just to have something standard. All in all, guys, time will tell. I'm going to run this thing the next 3 months at my work and encourage other people there to use it. And actually, a few guys want to train how to show them how to TIG weld, so this is a good little machine for that. But in about 3 months, I'll do a follow-up video on this thing talking about it, if I like it still in 3 months or if it's giving me problems. So if you guys are interested in the video, please hit like and subscribe, and get notified when that new video comes out in 3 months. Alright, you guys, take care. Thanks for watching. Bye.